it's always a tapeworm story. People will even give themselves worms to lose weight, which I never ever recommend, because now you're putting an organism in, you're feeding it, and it may get out of control for sure. So don't do that. If you have these parasites in you and they're soaking up not only the nutrients, they're actually pulling nutrients in them, such as your CoQ10s and your proteins and your carbohydrates, are pulling them in for them to use. Your body's actually expending energy on top of that to deal with the parasite and the toxin. Another thing that parasites actually do is, and they'll actually increase their activity when you enter more dopamine or serotonin into a body. So people that are taking medications, people that are taking certain supplements like 5-HTP, those do have an effect on parasites. Parasites like to gobble those up, which then can make you depressed and anxious, but make them really happy and motile and moving around and doing their thing. Because remember, you're the host. They don't really care what happens to you too much. They're eating up all those yummy neurotransmitters and allowing themselves to function.
If you haven't done so already, go ahead and click that subscribe button down below. It's a little red button. You punch that, and it's going to notify you every time we put out a new episode that can help you improve your bone health. And then also, if you haven't done so already, head over to BoneCoach.com, sign up for the free 7-day Osteoporosis Kickstart. That's going to walk you through everything you need to be doing right now to get on the path to improvement and stronger bones. After you do those two things, go ahead and press play on this episode, and I'll see you inside. Welcome to this episode of the BoneCoach Show. Joining us today to explore parasites and their connection to your gut, your bones, and your health is Dr. Jaban Moore. Dr. Jaban Moore is a doctor of chiropractic located in Kansas City who works virtually with clients through functional medicine to assist them in overcoming chronic health conditions. At age 25, he went from being an award-winning college athlete to not being able to get out of bed. He sought out countless doctors looking for answers, but doctors only gave him Band-Aid solutions. He was later diagnosed with Lyme disease. Once he overcame his complex infection, he dedicated his practice to helping clients discover the causes of their symptoms. Dr. Moore specializes in Lyme disease, PANDAS, autism, parasitic infections, and environmental toxicities. Dr. Moore and his team at the Redefining Wellness Center see clients virtually. His website, where you can gain access to education, live videos, and programs. And we're going to link to this website in the show notes as well at the end of this episode. So Dr. Moore, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me, man. This is an honor to be here.
This is such an important topic. Now, we talk about how important gut health is for bone health, but there are certain aspects of gut health that we have never discussed on this podcast before. And I think you're the right person to speak with us about Parasite 101. Right? We're going to walk through this, and the reason why parasites are something that most people are probably not familiar with, how they could be affecting their health, how they could be affecting their bones. But I want to start at just like the basic level first for our audience, because they may not even be familiar. What are parasites?
So parasite is an organism that gets into your body that has been stated by whoever does that it's going to take from you and not give back. So one common one, 1 million people in the United States last year were diagnosed with Giardia. This is a single cellular organism that gets into your body. It releases endotoxins. You end up with diarrhea, and it's taking nutrients from you, releasing toxins. You're not feeling good. Like I said, 1 million people in the United States last year alone were diagnosed with this.
And parasites, so you mentioned Giardia. Now, Giardia is one type of parasite, but you can get that from going down a kayak in a river, whitewater rafting. That water flips up into your mouth, right? You swallow that water, and next thing you know, you could have this potentially, but not know it. Are these kind of the ways that people get these parasitic infections? They may be ways that you just don't even know.
Yeah, absolutely. So Giardia is, like you said, it's in ponds, lakes, rivers. That's where most people are getting this. And the thing that most people don't understand is, we're told, oh, you didn't go to a third world country, you can't have a parasite. Well, the truth is, like I said, 1 million people had Giardia. 100 million people got strongyloides parasite. And then 3.5 billion people on this planet, so half of the people on the planet, are going to deal with a parasite at some point in their life. That's just the statistics. You can go on the web, look it up. That's what they're going to say. So parasites are very common, and they're absolutely in the westernized world. A lot of people are like, well, doc, my doctor said I shouldn't have one because I'm here in the United States. I go, well, just let's step back for a moment. Do you deworm your dog, cat, horse, cow, ferret, or bird? You do, right? Well, let's take it even more. Your cat that never leaves the inside of your house, that indoor cat, you still have to deworm it, right? Well, yes, you do. A lot of times, vets will tell you to do it once or twice a year. Well, that cat is eating food that you fed it that are little tiny cubes that are checked for parasites, and it's living in the exact same environment as you. And it's licking you, laying in your bed, maybe scooting its butt across your bed, allowing for parasites and spores to get around you. So that's just the animal aspect of things. So an animal can give you a parasite. Any raw food that you eat, whether that be sushi, raw vegetables like broccoli or celery, when a parasite is crawling up that celery stem, it can put different types of spores or eggs in that. So if you're not cleaning it and cooking it completely, which is nearly impossible, then parasites can get into your system and now your body has to deal with it. Now, here's the good thing. Your body's designed to deal with parasites when it's healthy. Now, we'll get to what that means here in just a second. But some other ways that you get parasites are from touching the ground, like touching the dirt, working in the soil, and then touching your mouth, putting your fingers in your mouth, touching a doorknob, or when kids do the same thing. So they're out playing around, and then, you know, I've got a little kid right now, and what's he do? He touches my face. He was crawling around on the carpet. So this is ways where parasites are going to be in our environment. They're in all of our environment. It doesn't matter what country you're in. It doesn't matter how safe your environment is. Parasites are all around us. Our bodies are just designed to be able to deal with them when they're healthy. Unfortunately, 75% of the United States, age 40 plus, have a chronic condition. So most of us aren't in a position to expect our bodies to do their jobs on their own without a little help.
Okay, so how is our body designed to prevent us from getting parasitic infections?
Yeah, so you have different saliva, which is an enzyme in your mouth that break down different types of food. They break down carbohydrates. So that's the start point of your digestive process. From there, you go down into the digestive tract where in the stomach, we have what's called HCl or hydrochloric acid. This hydrochloric acid should, when a egg or a spore or a parasite get in there, it should incinerate it. And then you go from there into the gut where we have more digestive juices like pepsin, which can break down proteins, and lipase, which can break down fats. The reason why fat's important in this is because some spores and eggs are going to have fat wrapped around it to protect it. It can be called a cyst form. And then as it continues in the digestive tract, there are specific bacteria. And we've seen this in studies. There's more than 40,000 named bacteria in your gut. Now, that doesn't mean only 40,000 bacteria. That's just individual names. There's hundreds of millions of bacteria there if you counted them one by one. And several of those types of strains are actually designed to defend you. So if you had a full gut, then you would actually end up with, say, one type of bacteria that defends against Giardia and another against Strongyloides. Now, why I said that most of us anymore don't have this defense mechanism is when you're taking an antacid, when you're chomping down on those Tums, or you're drinking Pepto-Bismol, if you're on a omeprazole medication, so anything that's an antacid, this decreases your hydrochloric acid and then makes you more vulnerable when you eat food to not have that protection of that HCl. So now you eat sushi, you eat raw broccoli, raw fruits and vegetables, which I love. I go home and I'll grab a box of raspberries and I start throwing them in my mouth after I wash them. Well, if I don't have a healthy gut, it could be carrying parasites. And so as they go down in that HCl, that's taken away by the hydrochloric acid. Well, then it gets into the next layer of defense, which is bacteria. Well, how many people do you know today that haven't taken antibiotics? Very few, right? How many people do you know that eat truly organic food that has no antimicrobials on those foods, such as Roundup or glyphosate or these other types of chemicals that are known agents for killing bacteria? So if you look in the research, specifically a lot of those herbicides and pesticides and insecticides, they actually have chemicals that break down pathways in bacteria and kill them. So now we have antacids, we have these chemicals that are going in and killing your microbiome, whether it be antibiotics or pesticides or toxins in the environment. And the last one is stress. So if you're stressed out at all, if you right now need to lower your trap, so just take a breath for me and go and just try to drop your shoulders. If you can drop your shoulders, that means that they're a little tense. That means you got a little stress going on. Now, that doesn't mean that your body's overwhelmed with stress, but it's a nice little exercise that you can do. Like, hey, am I stressed? Drop them. Oh, I can drop them 2 inches. What's going on? Do I need to work on my nervous system? So if you're stressed, this actually decreases stomach acid also. And by that stress decreasing stomach acid, you don't even have to be on medication or an antacid, and you can have lower hydrochloric acid, so a lower defense. And this allows for those parasites in. And then the last piece is something that you had talked to me about a little earlier, and it's, what other things allow parasites in? And we can go deep diving into that over time. But if you're living in a moldy house that suppresses your immune system, it's going to allow for organisms to come in and take place like parasites. If you are getting these toxic environmental chemicals in or heavy metals in from your diet or for unclean food or hygiene products, it actually feeds parasites. So then your body wants to bring parasites in to clean them up, because parasites help to actually clean up chemical toxicities. The problem is in our world that we live in today, there's so much toxin that's hitting us every single day that our body may allow this parasite in to clean it up, but then it's like, well, there's more toxins, so it just keeps letting it stay there until they multiply, and now they become a problem. Whereas if we go back 1,000 years, there's not all these chemical toxins that your body's being hit with, so that parasite gets brought in, it cleans stuff up that you drink from that bad water that was in the river that you were at, and then your body cleans the parasite out and moves on. So it actually may have been a symbiotic process in that time frame back in the day versus where we live and how we live today.
Hey, it's Bone Coach Kevin Ellis. I want to take one more minute to talk about if you are somebody who was newly diagnosed with osteopenia or osteoporosis, and you're at a point where you're stressed, you're worried, you're overwhelmed, you have no idea where to start or how to get started getting confident in your plan. I want to tell you about the Stronger Bone Solution Program. Over 5,000 people have come through the Stronger Bone Solution Program, and it walks you through the exact process you need to fill in the missing pieces, uncover critical things in your plan that you may not be aware of, and help you make modifications, adjustments, and tweaks to get you to the place where you're building stronger bones. I want you to get confident in your plan so that you can focus on living life and enjoying the life that you deserve with the people you love most. So if that's where you want to be, head over to bonecoach.com/apply and apply for our Stronger Bone Solution Program right now. I'm Bone Coach Kevin Ellis. I want to see you inside this program. I want to help you get on the path to improvement and stronger bones. Hope to see you inside very soon. Let's get back to the episode.
Now, as we're talking about toxins, you mentioned heavy metals, you mentioned mold, and we're talking about parasites, and then detoxification is obviously a really important part of this. How do the liver and the gallbladder play into this too?
So parasites, when they come into your body and they take up residence, the most people think the concept is parasites are in your gut, which many of them are. If you're thinking about your tapeworms, your big helminths, which are the worms, if you're looking at your nematodes, which are about 1 centimeter in size. So when you poop, if you are seeing rice come out, if you're seeing little pearls come out, and you're like, I haven't ate rice recently, you might have a parasite. If you're seeing strings in your stool or little wormy looking things, or tomato skins, but you haven't ate tomatoes or spaghetti, you might have a parasite. Your body is able to clear these things a little bit on its own when healthy, but if you're seeing those things coming out and you have some symptoms, if you have bone issues, if you have digestive issues, if you're not feeling like you're absorbing nutrients well, you might have those types of parasites in your body. And when all of these types of toxins are there, when we have different parasites, different heavy metals in our body, the body is actually going to allow the parasites to eat that stuff up. But then the parasites are actually releasing toxins too on top of that. So they're releasing endotoxins into your body. Some parasites release endotoxins into your body that actually cause constipation. They cause irritation to the gut lining. They cause anxieties. There was one study done to mice on parasites, and what they did is they put toxoplasmosis in mice. And this toxoplasmosis parasite would run a mouse out in front of a cat to get eaten, because toxoplasmosis wants to be in a cat. So it actually changed the chemical responses in the brain, the neurotransmitters, to make this mouse brave and do something it normally wouldn't do, so that it would get eaten to be so that the cat would be the final host for the parasite. So parasites can actually cause you to change your behavior, be more irritable, eat more food, have those sweets cravings, eat food that's not good for you, more carbohydrate dense, not necessarily the nutrient dense foods that you want to make strong bones.
Now that's super interesting, because some people think that the reason why they're just snacking and eating carbs and or going after these sugary treats may just be because they don't have the discipline. Like this may be their internal dialogue. I'm not disciplined, or maybe I'm just self-soothing or something like that. But you're saying also it could potentially be maybe driven from a parasitic infection.
Yeah, absolutely. So ways to maybe think about this would be, are my cravings worse around a full moon? Are my cravings worse at night? Because a lot of parasites' life cycles may be nighttime oriented, and then even more so around a full moon in orientation. So parasites actually will change their life cycles around based on moon cycles quite often. So we'll see as the moon gets closer and gravity changes, which we see with the tides in the water. That's how the parasites are recognizing this, that their activity becomes more, and they may actually come out of their cyst forms. So the forms where they're maybe just hibernating and protecting themselves, or out not reproducing. They may come out to feed or to reproduce more so during that full moon period of time. So if you're noticing more symptoms around the full moon or at night, this may be a sign that parasites are a problem.
That's really interesting. And then what are these parasites? So are they feeding off the nutrients that we're putting in our bodies? Are they feeding off neurotransmitters or other things that are in our bodies right now that are leading to depletion within us?
Absolutely. So parasites, it's always a tapeworm story. People will even give themselves worms to lose weight, which I never ever recommend, because now you're putting an organism in, you're feeding it, and it may get out of control for sure. So don't do that. But it's something that's been done before. And once these organisms are in you, they are eating up your nutrients, and they take a significant amount of energy for your body to corral, maintain, deal with the toxicities that they release, which is their poop, into your body, which takes away from you feeling good and thriving. So I tell people all the time, I go, your body makes, say, let's just give a round number, 1,000 units of energy, which would be ATP for your body. Let's say if it made 1,000 a day, about 600 of those are for the digestive process and the gut, which includes a lot of the immune response, about 600 of them. Well, that leaves 400 for the rest of the processes in your body, such as moving your blood around and thinking and exercising and doing your job during the day. If you have these parasites in you and they're soaking up not only the nutrients, they're actually pulling nutrients in them, such as your CoQ10s and your proteins and your carbohydrates, are pulling them in for them to use, your body's actually expending energy on top of that to deal with the parasite and the toxin. And then you did mention just neurotransmitters. So another thing that parasites actually do is they will get more, and they'll actually increase their activity when you enter more dopamine or serotonin into a body. So people that are taking medications, people that are taking certain supplements like 5-HTP, those do have an effect on parasites. Parasites like to gobble those up, which then can make you depressed and anxious, but make them really happy and motile and moving around and doing their thing. Because remember, you're the host. I don't really care what happens to you too much. They're eating up all those yummy neurotransmitters and allowing themselves to function.
So we've got parasites that can be depleting nutrients, B vitamins, your minerals, also important bone healthy minerals, your iron, your calcium, your magnesium. Different neurotransmitters can be affected here. Maybe let's talk about, how do we know if we actually have a parasitic infection?
So it starts with symptoms. So if you have anal itching, rashing at all on your skin, if you're grinding your teeth at night, GI upset, which can be cramping, bloating, pain, diarrhea, constipation, these are common parasite symptoms. Sugar cravings, dark bag circles under your eyes. These are common parasite symptoms. And there's a number of others. So if I get more specific, say Babesia, which is a common co-infection of Lyme disease, you'd have headaches and pain in the back of your head. If you have strongyloides, this is a type of parasite that can get out in your muscle tissues and give you that achy fibromyalgia pain. It also is the one that really affects women, especially with their menstrual cycles, and affects the ovaries. But each one has their own different thing. The first symptoms were more all-inclusive for the majority of parasites, because there are thousands of different kinds of parasites, 70% of which are actually microscopic. Only 30% are visual to the human eye. So if you have parasites that you can see coming up, you might have a parasite. You probably do, right? So there's the symptoms, there's the visual representation, which is rare, but can happen. And then there's testing. So if you run blood testing, you can look at a blood test and you may have positive IgG markers to say Babesia, but most parasites we don't test through the blood. You can also look at white blood cell types. If your eosinophils are above 5, which is a type of white blood cell that you would see in a CBC or a comprehensive blood panel, you can see eosinophils there. If it's above 5, you might have a parasite. If you're having liver stress with your AST or ALT in your blood test, this is something I commonly see again with parasites. And then lastly, the standard right now, which is a broken standard, is the stool sample. The stool sample has been the gold standard within medicine for years, but what we're finding is it's just not good enough. Now, how a stool sample works is this. You poop in a cup, you send it to the lab. The lab has a technician that looks at it under a microscope for about 3 minutes, and then they discard that sample and go to the next. The problem is they're taught to look for basically ovum only, which is egg. And they're taking just a little piece, they're putting it on a slide, they got to move around and look, yes or no, move to the next. Parasites are biological organisms. So when you poop in a cup and then let's say you see a parasite, you put it on the top, by the time that gets to the lab, it's decayed. So you're not going to see nearly as much. Secondly, the technician, who is not a pathologist, isn't trained to look for that. They're trained to look for poop. So they'll scrape whatever off to the side and then put the poop on the slide and look at it under a microscope. That's their training. There are a couple of labs now that are starting to come on, and I'm experimenting with them, that have pathologists that are more likely to look for these sorts of things. But we don't have everything there yet. So for me, it's mostly based on symptoms and then looking at those eosinophils. That's how I'm doing more of my identification, because the other way is you could run 4 or 5 different stool samples that each have better tech for this type of organism or that. Problem is that gets really expensive. And I'd rather do a $100 protocol than do $4,000 of labs to then come back and do the $100 protocol.
So what does a parasite protocol look like?
So it can be different for different people. Different organisms respond to different types of herbs. Some of my favorite herbs out there, and I probably got about 10 that are really common and seem to do really well for a lot of clients. So you've got your standard oregano, wormwood, black walnut, blue tansy, clove, noni morinda, neem, and those are probably the 7. That's probably my 7 most common used that I actually use on a day-to-day basis with clientele. These herbs can be combined, and what I end up doing is I will put together the right combination for the client, or I'll use a product like, say, from Cellcore, use their Para 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'll put someone on it for about 30 to 60 days, and I will rotate every 30 days what herbal tincture or cocktail that I'm using, just to make sure that we're getting a variety of herbs in there to do their job. Because for my experience, from about the day 14, you've probably done about 80 to 90% of what those herbs are going to do. You can hold on for another 7 to 14 days. You're going to get about 95% of what they can knock out. And then you got to move on to the next thing so that the body stays guessing and the organisms stay guessing. Also, because there's usually more than one organism. If you have a parasitic infection, it's probably not just one thing. You've probably by this point had your body become susceptible to multiple things. So I'm going to go in there and try and clear out several other pieces. Now, just taking the herbs, that can be a little bit hairy, because if you're doing a detox, you probably want to support your body in that function. So if you don't, what you may end up experiencing is something like a hangover. If you've ever drank a little too much, woke up the next day, didn't feel well, or had the flu and been achy and just kind of crummy all over, that can happen if you're doing a detoxification protocol without supporting the body. So what I like to do is I like to add a little bit of milk thistle, N-acetylcysteine, TUDCA. These are liver supportive herbs and enzymes that can be given to you to help support your body during the time that you're doing an antimicrobial for parasites. So how I do this is I like to use, again, Cellcore, which is, they have a KL support and a TUDCA product. And I'll combine those products with the antimicrobial products and take them together so that the clients that I'm working with don't have those hangover-like symptoms afterward, because nobody wants to feel like that trying to get well if we don't have to. And making sure to keep the body's detoxification pathways, which is your lymphatic ducts, which are all around your body. That's where waste goes. It then gets funneled down to your liver, and that's why we're using liver supports. The liver then filters it out, puts it into the gut, and as long as it's bound up by binders, which can be either bile from your gallbladder, which is what TUDCA helps you to improve, or you can add in binders like fulvic humic binders or active carbons, or charcoals to bind up the endotoxins and the breakdown of those parasites and pull it out through your stool and into the toilet. So that's a basic process of helping to clear parasites.
I mean, that was super helpful. That was really, really helpful to hear that specific level of detail. And then in terms of, can you talk about biofilms also and how that may play into this too?
Absolutely. So I've referenced it a little bit without using the word. I've talked about the fat shell that different organisms can put around themselves. So whether you're dealing with parasites or Lyme disease, whether it's bacteria or parasites, they both have the ability to create what's called biofilm. And this is a shell that goes around the organism to protect it from herbs, antibiotics, your immune system. And while it's in there, it's fairly protected. So what we'll do is, in cases where we need to be a little bit more advanced, we could use proteolytic enzymes, such as CTzyme from Cellcore, or I've used a number of other different enzymes over time. Some of the ones that I like to use is nattokinase or serrapeptase, lumbrikinase. These are different types of enzymes. You can give these, and you want to take them away from food because they're designed to break food down. We don't want to break food down in this case. We want to break down those cyst forms or the fat that's wrapped around the organisms. And by breaking that down, then the herbal tinctures in your immune system can go in and it can deal with those parasites or bacteria that you're trying to get to. And the reason why these organisms do it is it's just protection. It's simply just protection. Because like I said, they have a life cycle. So part of their life cycle, they're out, they're reproducing, they're eating. Part of their life cycle, they're in this where they can grow and change, kind of like a butterfly. Or maybe they protect themselves from your immune system. So they just did that and put that little shell around them. So that's why we have to go do that with some people.
And are all parasites bad?
No, I don't think all parasites are bad. As I was saying earlier, there are times and places where there's been some research that have shown some parasites can work beneficially for you to reduce immune responses. So there are people using worms that are typically only in pork, and it's reduced immune response for things like Crohn's or ulcerative colitis. I'm not sure where I stand on that. Usually I try to figure out what's causing those things and reverse that, but they're showing some positive results there for a parasite. And then the other one is they do help to cleanse your body of toxins, but you've got to make sure your body's strong enough to deal with those things. And I believe, at least in my experience, that we all have bacteria in our body. We all are accepting of that now with the microbiome. We all have viruses that run throughout our entire body also, because that's normal. You'll see that 96% of the population has Epstein-Barr in the body. Most of us aren't sick from it or tired from it, only if you let it get out of control. The same thing goes with parasites. We're going to have parasites and fungus in our body doing their thing. We need to keep our bodies in a healthy homeostatic or equilibrium to where it can maintain what's going on within us. And that's why I mentioned earlier, making sure that you control your stress levels, you're not getting in toxins, you're not taking these antacids, so that your body is able to defend itself and manage itself on its own. That's optimal living and health. And then whatever organisms you come into contact with, your body can handle. So it's not about living in fear, it's about living optimally.
Hey, it's Bone Coach Kevin Ellis. Thanks so much for tuning into this episode of the Bone Coach Show. If you're finding it helpful, please leave a positive rating and review. Hit that like button, subscribe to the podcast or the channel. That lets us help more people and reach and serve more people. And it also lets us know that this is helpful to you on your journey to better health and stronger bones. And then also, right down in the show notes, you can actually find a link to my free Bone Healthy Recipes Guide. That's going to give you access to some amazing and delicious recipes to support your journey to stronger bones. And then also we have a link to my free Stronger Bones Masterclass in the show notes too. And that is the 3-step process that has helped people in over 1,500 cities around the world get confident in their plan for stronger bones. Over 110,000 people have taken part in this, and it's been really, really helpful for them. And I want you to have free access to it too. So add your name and email right down there in the show notes, get access to that free Stronger Bones Masterclass, and let's get you confident in your Stronger Bones plan today.
And I know you specialize in, you don't just specialize in parasitic infections, you also specialize in Lyme disease, PANS, PANDAS. Can you actually touch on each of those, maybe just give us an overview, what those are, and maybe how somebody would know if they have either of those conditions?
Absolutely. So my journey in this is I ended up with Lyme disease, and it brought me to just having a passion for complex chronic illness. And as people have come into my clinic with one thing, and then they refer their friend with the thing that seems worse because they had success, I've learned about all these other pieces. So Lyme disease is a bacterial infection. It's mostly thought of from a tick, although it can come from any insect-borne vector. It's a chronic infection that can be in your body for years on end, suppressing your immune system, causing weakness, leading to MS type or rheumatoid arthritis type symptoms. So brain degenerative symptoms where you have tingling and aching, or it can have joint where you start feeling really achy and tight. That's common Lyme symptoms, alongside of brain fog and fatigue, heart palpitations, and muscle weakness can come along with Lyme disease. So this is something that people say is more in the Northeast, but I've got clients testing positive for Lyme disease all around the world, whether it's Australia, Panama, the country, Europe, and even into the Middle East and Saudi Arabia. I've had positive tests for Lyme disease. So it's around the world now. And this is something that is missed so often. Anybody who walks into my clinic with MS or rheumatoid arthritis, I immediately go, have you been checked for bacterial or other types of infections? Most of the time the answer is no. PANS and PANDAS is something that I never even thought of growing up, going through school, until someone walked into my office, said, my kid has this, can you help it? And I said, no. And they said, well, what'd you do for this other person you worked with? I said, well, I looked for what's generating inflammation, and we worked to reduce the inflammation and optimize the system. Can you do that for me? Well, PANS and PANDAS is pediatric acute neuro onset of a psychiatric disorder. So just imagine your 6, 7, 8-year-old, normal, going to school, handwriting developing, talking, walking, enjoying life, cuddling with you, and drawing pictures, playing sports. All the things that you want your child to do, whatever that is. And then they get an infection. And a few weeks later, you start noticing that they're a little anxious. And then maybe their teacher's saying, well, they're not doing quite as good in school. And this turns into a little bit more irritability. That can be what's called PANS or PANDAS. That infection, if it was strep, it becomes PANDAS. If it's not strep or any other infection that doesn't quite follow that timeline even, it can be PANS. So basically, if your child was developing normal and then you just started noticing this downward slide, I would consider, is there some inflammatory immune process happening to their brain? And right now we have 1 in 6 children diagnosed with a mental health disorder. 1 in 32 kids have autism. 1 in 200 are diagnosed with PANS, and nobody's even looking at PANS. When I have kids come into my clinic at this point, we just look. We just, look under the hood a little bit. Like, is there something causing kids to struggle? Because just like bone health, just like gut health, if there is an immune response that was triggered by something else, but then it got a little confused and now it's attacking your bones or it's attacking your gut, maybe you have Crohn's or osteoporosis. This is for your brain. And it's technically, because of the P, it's pediatric, although if you take the P off, it's just infection-driven inflammatory process causing neurological symptoms. And this is something that we're seeing as a rapidly ongoing issue that has solutions.
I love that. And I know you are an expert with solutions, and you really do specifically have a unique perspective in the health space and the health community. And you specialize in areas that, there are not a lot of people focused on these areas. So I would love are there any other things that you think are important from your unique perspective in the health space that would be important for our audience to understand before we let them know where they can find you?
Absolutely. Whether it's your bones, your gut, or your brain, your body is designed to heal. Your body is designed to be able to be well and be optimal. So looking for causation of what's going on, whether that's not eating the right diet, whether that's taking a drug that decreases the absorption of calcium that leads to bone degeneration, or a lack of movement that leads to mitochondrial degradation, or in my case, what I'm working with, toxins like mold toxicity that you're breathing in, suppressing the body's function. There is a way to get better and a way to get well. I've seen people at 70 years old who've been sick their entire lives get their health back and then be able to go live more vibrantly at 70 than they were at 30. So that's just the way I like to end, is just to make sure people know there's always hope no matter what you're dealing with.
I love that. Such an empowering message, very hopeful. And Dr. Jaban Moore, thank you so much for taking the time to share all of that with our audience and your knowledge and expertise. I'd love for you to share. Could you tell everybody where they can find you?
Absolutely. Dr. Jaban Moore. Jaban is spelled J-A-B as in boy, A-N. And I'm on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and I have a website. I'm all over the place with the socials. We're trying to put information out every day because I know when I was sick, when I was looking for answers, no one was talking about Lyme disease until I finally got to a conference after dozens of doctors. And somebody's like, hey, you might have this thing. And I go, awesome. How do I fix that? And they're like, well, I don't know, but look into it. So I'm trying to be the guy that can go out there and just put information out so people have an opportunity to make an informed decision about their health and be able to get somewhere to get well.
Wonderful. And absolutely love that. And for everybody listening, you can find all of the resources, show notes, everything mentioned here today over at bonecoach.com/Dr. Jaban Moore. Lyme, parasites, osteoporosis. I want to thank you again so much for your time. We'll see you in the next episode. Hey, it's Bone Coach Kevin Ellis. Hope you found that episode helpful and that you enjoyed it. Just one last reminder, if you haven't done so already, head over to bonecoach.com, sign up for your free 7-day osteoporosis kickstart. It's going to tell you everything you need to do to start getting on the path to improvement. Hope you found this helpful. I'm your Bone Coach Kevin Ellis. I'll see you soon.